Welcome, everyone. My name's Karen Zagans, and I'm the director and flute faculty member for Z-Tunes Music. I'm excited today to welcome the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra trumpet player, Stuart Stephenson, as our clinician today. Stuart Stephenson joined the ASO as principal trumpet at the beginning of the 2013-14 season. He has also been a guest musician with the Los Angeles Philharmonic, the New York Philharmonic, National Symphony Orchestra, and the Kansas City Symphony. Stuart is on the faculty at the Aspen Music Festival and School and has performed at the Sun Valley Summer Symphony, Grand Teton Music Festival, and mainly Mozart Festival in San Diego. He is also on faculty at Emory University and Georgia State University, in addition to maintaining a private teaching studio. So for today's clinic, we're going to stay on mute while Mr. Stephenson works through the trumpet audition excerpts. I suggest you have your copy of the excerpt and a pencil ready to make notes. You can type in any questions into the chat box and we'll ask them at the end of each excerpt. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Stephenson. Thank you.
All right, thank you, and good morning, everyone. I'm glad you can join us. At any time, feel free to type something into the chat, and I'll try to answer any questions as best as I can. And especially if I gloss over something, or if I don't mention something that maybe you think you've had trouble on, or maybe you think could help or something, just let me know, and I'll try to work through it. So I think I'll get started. I apologize in advance if Zoom kind of messes with the sound. I have an external mic that I usually plug into my iPad, but it's been a little bit funky recently, so I have to figure that out. But I have an actual mic coming next week. So if it goes out, just let me know and I can replay things if I need to. I'll just start this off. I'll play through the first etude, Andante Espressivo, and I'll talk to you through it afterwards. So that's the first etude there, the lyrical etude. Now, some of the things in this etude are kind of just awkward how they write them, and I do that, I think, on purpose, just to trip you up. And a second thing that I think, and we'll talk through some of these specifics, is they want to space it out in a way that makes the breathing actually, I think, kind of bad for you. Not intentionally, but I think they don't write it a way that feels natural and good. So there's not that many places to breathe, right? We have technically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different rests that you can breathe in. And if you need to breathe on every one, that's fine. But I think for me in particular, I want to breathe less. So for instance, I don't breathe in between measures, or measure 4 during that the third beat, the 8th note rest. Because if I breathe there and then I get to the next rest I need to breathe, I feel like I have too much air in my lungs, and then I have to feel like then it makes you feel like you need to breathe again, which makes it worse. So I think it's a good idea to not breathe there. Yeah. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. I said that completely wrong. Please breathe in measure 4, but don't breathe the next one. I'm sorry, that was a slip up here. That's the one where I think it's better if you don't breathe in. I'm sorry, I just had said that wrong, and I got it wrong in my brain here. Okay, so I think that same thing holds true at the very end as well. Measure 14. If you need to take a breath there, That's great. And I think I did this time, but playing through it earlier this morning, depending on how I'm feeling, sometimes I can get away without it. So you do whatever you need to make this work right. But I think if you're going to breathe, breathe only in the places that have the rests. You don't want to breathe on the bar line and mess up some of the actual music, the lines going on. Okay, so a couple other little pitfalls that I think they'll make this a little more awkward is a lot of times they have these crescendos during a rest, right? So measure 4, measure 12, and it's just a little bit awkward because obviously you can't crescendo when you're not playing, right? But you have to just think about it up here, like you're going to have to keep going. That's all. Is you just have to think about it and be like, okay, well, take for measure 4, for instance, you're crescendoing through that C, and then when you get to the F, you have to think about the F being higher, louder than the C, even though you weren't playing right beforehand. And the same thing holds true for measure 12. All right, so one thing I think also that might trip people up is starting measure 9. You have the 16th notes, and we think whenever we see 16ths, a lot of times it's like, oh crap, I gotta go fast. It's hard technique wise. This is one of those spots. Take your time, because if you go, it's going to get awkward, and then you might trip over your own fingers. You have plenty of time to just take your time on the 16th. Plenty of time. Don't worry about rushing through it, and don't worry about this being a technique thing and like just trying to power through it. And we have one new person, or 2 people I think that just joined a minute ago. I'm Stuart Stephenson. If you ever have any questions, just feel free to type them into the chat, and I'll try to answer them as best I can. And we just got another one. I'll say it again. If you have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat. And I'm going to play this again in a minute for those few people who are joining a little bit late. Okay, so at the very end, sometimes when we see a fermata, it's like, okay, what do we do? Do you do 1.5 times? So maybe the last note would be 6 beats. I think the best way to think about this is hold it out, at least full value, go a little bit more. And if you're feeling like maybe it's not going to go so well, it's a good time to stop. And you don't need to hold it out for like 20 seconds. That's just going to be really weird. But just take a little bit extra time on it. So that was like 5, 6 beats. But I think it's plenty of time. So you don't need to worry about trying to make this like just, as long as possible. Okay, good. Let's see. Good. So when you have, I think another little tricky thing on this, for me even, and I'm sure it will be for some of you as well, these big slurs. So if you look, measure 1, you go from the D to the F. That's a kind of awkward slur because you could hit a B flat on the way down. The next one, going from G to the E flat, you can hit a few different notes on the way up. What I like to tell my students is when you have a big interval, wait as long as possible on the first note. Because if you start thinking about going, to the next thing, then it's going to kind of fall apart. So if I start thinking while I'm on the D about the F too early, you can hit all that junk on the way down. You don't want to do that. So wait as long as possible on the top note. Same thing on that one. So whenever you have, whenever you have a big interval, you want more than maybe like a second or third away, wait on the first note because it'll make it so much easier. It'll feel maybe a little more uncomfortable because you're not sure what's going to happen, but it's going to work out better. Trust me on that one. All right, does anybody have any questions or anything before I play it again? Again, feel free, if anything doesn't make sense, if you want me to repeat anything. This one, you don't have to worry about too much about articulation, right? Because it's not super technical. You have the normal amounts of things. Whenever you see things like measure 4 and measure 12, measure 8, measure 6. Whenever you have the tenutos, think about giving those a nice, good, long articulation, because otherwise you get. And it gets a little bit, choppy and it just doesn't have a nice line to it. Yeah. Okay, well, if you do have questions, feel free to type them in. I'm going to go ahead and play this one again, and afterwards, maybe it'll bring something up that you had a question about. So that's the first etude, the lyrical etude. And you might have noticed something that I didn't want to happen, but it did happen. Pick up going into bar 9, and then the last note, the response was a little bit late. And that's because I was just trying to be too gentle with the articulation. It kind of went fa da da, ti da da di. So just be careful about that. I'd rather you have a good clean articulation than good. All right, anything about that first one? All right, well, if you don't, feel free to type it in. I'll come back to it. But I'm going to go ahead and move on to the second one, the technical etude. Now, usually when they write these, I say the GMEA, they always write these pieces kind of to trip you up, especially the technical one. Now, I've worked on this with a couple of students, and you'll notice. So let's see. I'm trying to find a really good measure for it. If everyone looks at measure 14 in the technical etude, the first beat you have an accent, one of these accents, right? Second part of the beat you have staccatos. The end of the line you have these accents. Now, they do that for a purpose because they want to trip you up. They want to see if you can make a difference. Now, there's always a question of what's the difference between these two accents, right? Because they're both accents. Great. So I think the general idea for accents is these are a little bit longer, a little bit not heavier, but it's not a short like slap. It's a you kind of lean into it a little bit more. That's why a lot of times you'll see these with like a tenuto underneath them because they want like a good hit but long. Now these are just a good hit on them. These guys, rooftop accents, are more like a good like slap, like a crack, or if anybody's, I don't know if anybody does marching band, or if you've probably had percussionists behind you take a drumstick and smack their the edge of the snare doing a rim shot. It goes like, it has a crack, and that's kind of what you want to do. So in measure 14, for instance, that's hard to do a difference, but you're going to have to give it a try. Now, I'll talk through some more things when I finish playing this, but I'll get through it first and then try to demonstrate those accents as much as possible. think this is the most exciting little etude. I think it's a little bit weaker maybe than the first one. But again, this one is just to see if you can, have a good clean articulation and to see if you're actually paying attention to what it has on the page. I tried to overdo some of the accents, and I don't know if it came out well enough, over this, because it's always a little bit funky. But you want to bring it out a little bit more than you think you're doing. So when we play the trumpet, how much of what you put in here do you think comes out here? Really, it's not that much. So if you think you're doing a good accent, it's maybe half of what you think it is. And the more you play and the more you improve, the more you go for it, the more it makes sense. And you're like, oh, okay, I'm actually doing maybe 40% of what I thought I was doing, or 60%, just, whatever. But you want to overdo it a little bit on these, especially because you're trying to show the judges that, hey, I saw what's on the page. Here it is. And if you don't like it, then too bad. But okay, so, and I mentioned earlier, they have accents with the tenutos on them, right? Well, that's measure 8 has one. The very last note has one. Measure 16 has one. So again, you want to do it as full length as possible. That tenuto means you do the whole beat. Let's see. So for instance, going into measure 8. It's all about, sustaining the full way through it. So as much as you can do to make that, you can see that, get that good tenuto line on there, very long note. It'll be better. Okay, and if you look, so most of this piece is technical. It's all about the articulation. But if you look at maybe, what is it, bar 9, bar 11, bar 17, bar 13, whenever you have these slurs, try to bring that out more, because it's supposed to be this kind of like back and forth of technical, and then you have some slurs and lyrical things, and it's kind of this like almost like seasick, like it's a little bit funky, but it's supposed to be that way. It's a little bit almost like two people talking or arguing with each other, just different ideas. Good. Well, anybody have any more or any questions? Not any more questions. Any questions? It's a very quiet group this morning. I mean, I know you can't actually, talk because it's muted, but you can type in. So I'm going to play this again in a minute. So this second one, you only play it the first 8 bars during the first round, and then you'll do it the whole thing, if you make it through to the final round, which I hope you all do. This one, it's kind of a march, it's kind of happy. Try to keep that kind of energetic, like you're excited about what's going on, and bring that out. The first one is a little more pleasant and relaxed, and this needs to be a little more intense and forward. Good. Let's see, any other little things? I mentioned during the first etude, it's easy to overbreathe in a lot of these etudes because they only give you a few places to breathe, and sometimes they're really close together. And if you can even try it now. If you take a breath, don't let it out, hold it for a little bit, take another breath, it just makes it tighter and tighter here. So, for instance, if you go to bar 9, great place to take a breath, no issues. But then if you take a breath also at a bar 11 and bar 13, it's going to get a little tight, and I'll demonstrate that you can hear that. You can hear already in my sound, it's kind of like trying to break apart almost because it's too tight. There's too much air in here. And so I think maybe take a breath at bar 9, great place. Don't take one at bar 11, and then take one again at bar 13. Because then you should have enough air to get you through to bar 17. All right, looks like we have a question. First one of the morning, great. Okay, so how can you help expand your lungs so you can go longer in one breath? That's a great question. So there's no real thing you can do, right? You can do breathing exercises. I've been talking to a free diver about what they do, but the biggest thing you can do is just get comfortable using it. So I think a lot of times we've had teachers say like, oh, you got to breathe from your belly or your gut because you need to have a big breath. That has some merit, because a lot of times, and for me, and for instance, I don't know if you can see this well, I would breathe up high when I was younger. I go, if you do that, you have air in there, it's fine, but you can feel the tension here. And the whole breathing from below thing is because if you breathe from the bottom of your lungs just go the whole thing. If you breathe from the top, it'll kind of open up from the top down. And I think one of the best ways to get comfortable doing that is to do a yawn breath. It's not really something you can do exactly when you're playing. I'll explain. So when you take a yawn, when you yawn, what does your throat do? What does your airway do? It pretty much goes as open as it can be, and it's not like you're forcing it. Your body's kind of taken over, and like you're not doing anything else right now. You're yawning. That's it. You can get a nice open breath, and that opens from the bottom. So now you can't take a good like. That doesn't work because it's a mismatch of style and breath. But if you can get that kind of open feeling here, you can take a better breath and fill up more of your lungs. Now, your lungs will expand as you get older, right, to a certain point. I think everybody's in what, 7th, 9th grade, something like that in this. So your lungs will be getting larger as you get a little bit older, but they will cap at some point. But you want to tap into as much as you can. Some of the best trumpet players I know are people who are shorter that don't have as large of a lung capacity, but they're just really good about filling it up to the max, and they can space it out well and use it really well. So I think on something like this, or any of these, and then when you're practicing, before you play, just go, okay, get a nice relaxed yawn breath, and see if you can match that feeling. Maybe take a little more intense of a breath. Now, don't do this too much because you will get lightheaded, and that's not good. So even right now, I did it a few times, feeling it. So just do it a couple, and then I'll be good. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and play through this etude again. Again, if anybody has any questions, concerns, they couldn't hear me play well or speak well, let me know. So the key to this one, you want to have good, clean articulation. T, T, ta, 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 T, T, T. Good, clean T, not ta, 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 T. Because it has to get the tongue up and forward a little bit. So good articulation. Bring out all the accents, or the different kinds of articulations, right? These accents, these accents, these accents, staccatos. Bring it all out and try to make it as clear to anyone listening as possible that you know exactly what you're doing. And if they had to write down what you were playing, they could do it easily, because they'd be like, oh, that was clearly this kind of accent. That was clearly a staccato. You just want to make it easy for the audience, the judges, to just listen and be like, yeah, I don't have anything to say. That was great. Just be comfortable and just play it like it's supposed to be played. Okay. Good, again, so last note, as long as possible, you give it a good accent, but full 3 beats. Because if you go bum ba dum bum 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 bee, it's wrong. Maybe it feels better, maybe it sounds better, I don't know, but it's gonna be wrong. Because they're gonna be like, oh, you didn't pay attention to the end. Because if we get to the end And our first thought is, oh, we're done finally. You're done when you're finished playing. You get all the way to the 3 beats, then you stop, then you can put your horn down. Yeah. Yeah, so again, just bring out the accents, give it good articulation, and that's really all you can do.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Stephenson. If there's not any more questions, we're going to go ahead and end today's clinic. Thanks for your valuable insight. I know I learned a lot, and I'm not even a trumpet player. So, and good luck to everyone here today or watching later on your upcoming auditions. I know they're a little bit different this year, but you're putting in the work, and that's what counts. Look out for more communication from Z-Tunes on lessons and upcoming clinics for Allstate and more. And have a great weekend, everyone. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, we just got a chat here, or a
Okay.
question chat. And the question is, what can I do to get a fuller sound? I feel like mine always sounds a little shallow. So, I mean, there's a couple things you can do. Some of it is just based on equipment. Like I play a larger mouthpiece. Now, when I was your age, I couldn't play this mouthpiece. I would have sounded like garbage because it was just too big and I wouldn't be able to actually put the air in and physically be able to do it. So some of that will change as you get older. But I think the most important part, and I think my sound now, no matter what mouthpiece I'll play on, will have generally my version of a sound. It comes from here. It comes from here and then these guys. Because you're the first person, or you're the first person that hears your sound, right? And you think, oh, my sound's over there, whatever. No, if you think, I want to have a nice full sound, and you just think about that. Just think about it. It's going to happen because your body will take that and run with it. Now, it's not going to be like, I want to have a sound that is, as big as a trombone. That's not going to happen because we don't have the horn and everything for that. But it comes from you, and it comes from doing it, thinking about getting a different sound, maybe a more full sound, a bigger sound. Do it on easy things, long tones, scales, whatever. Like, okay, maybe that was fine. Maybe I want to get a little bit bigger, so I'll think a little more broad, a little more open. And I don't know if it comes across well enough, but that was a little bit larger. Now, if I go a little bit further than that, the horn will just kind of back up on me because there's only a certain distance or so far you can go before the horn says, nope, it's not going to change anymore. But if I want to go the other way, maybe I want to get a more shallow or smaller sound. I think about that. Rather than now, to me, that doesn't feel as good and it doesn't sound as good. So I want to go a little bit more open. So some of it's from here and listening, and your body will tell you what to do. Some of it's also from here in the oral cavity. So if you're going to sing and you go da da, it's smaller. Da da. Maybe it's still the same notes, but it's a bigger sound and more broad. Granted, I'm not a good singer, so don't mimic my singing voice as a good tone. It's not. But that's how it starts. This up here, these guys are connected to it. This is connected to it. Everything's connected to it. So if you start from up here, that's the best thing you think you can do. And I think the last little bit on it is find some players that you like their tone. They don't have to even be trumpet players. They can be other brass players, wind players, jazz players, singers, any kind of music. It doesn't really matter. As long as you have an idea of like, I like that sound and I want to try to put that into my sound. And you can go back and forth. If you find a trumpet player you like, playing a piece you like, or a piece maybe a couple bars of even, listen to it, play along with it, play back, and see if you can match it as much as possible. And again, it doesn't have to be anything difficult because you want to get started on the easy stuff, and then you can, transition to whatever other pieces.
Awesome. Great question. Did you see any others pop up?
I did not. Anyone else? Going once?
All right. Thank you, everyone, and have a great weekend. Keep working on those trumpet excerpts. See you.
Good luck, everyone. Thanks for coming.